Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. It is Thursday, September 3rd, and I'm joined today by Richard of Are You Into Horror, a YouTube site dedicated to horror fiction and one of the most well-read members of the horror community I can imagine. How are you besides almost on fire, Richard?
I am doing great, Lauren. It's it's really, really bad out. We still have a lot of ash. We have a lot of smoke. I got my little albuterol inhaler here in case I start to choke, but otherwise we're doing really, really good. It's an honor to be here. I wanted to really tell you thanks a lot for doing this. So I'm really, I'm looking forward to this. But yeah, we're doing really, really good here. It's just really hot. Yeah. I wish it was in the 70s like you got, but no.
Well, high 70s, but 70s.
Yeah, it's 98 here right now. It's miserable.
But really, I can't take much credit anyway, for you being on the show. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the community, because this week and last week, they've really stepped up to their game about recommending people for the channel. And that's where the conversation about you actually started. So
wow.
It's really your followers, not mine, and certainly not me, that led to this conversation. But just to be transparent, earlier in the week, you and I spent about an hour on the phone call, which what I think both of us thought would be about a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, I did. And we were actually on the phone for, an hour and 3 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It was good. It was good. It eased me up on a lot of stuff, and it was good to talk to you. So
I think we probably could have recorded that conversation, and that could have been the show.
Yeah, we could have actually. Yeah, but we could have. We could have. It was a good talk. I had a really, really good talk with you.
Absolutely. I find it increasingly difficult to find people who are well versed in horror fiction, and we'll get into that during the course of this conversation. But it's a little bit easier to run into folks and talk Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th than it is to talk Richard Lehman or Shirley Jackson. To be honest.
Oh yeah.
But I want to tell you how I wanted to kind of design the evening with us. I'm taking a cue from a great piece of Gothic literature, though I wouldn't call it horror. So I'd like to talk to you in 3 parts about horror fiction of the past, of the present, and of the future. I think it's a logical way to go about this, because I'm always looking towards the future, but I have great reverence for the past. And I think you're kind of the same way.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. It's harder for me to get into modern fiction, but I do like modern fiction, and a lot of people that follow my channel and people whose channels I follow, I've learned a lot and found a lot of new fiction that I really, really, really like. I really like all fiction. Vintage horror is my favorite, and horror from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s is,
sweet spot.
I do it in my sleep.
So I really start every one of these shows with the same question, sometimes slightly rephrased, but how did you originally get bit by the horror bug?
Oh my God, it's funny. I have a book right here, as a matter of fact.
It's almost like you knew the question was coming.
This book right here, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, it was 1969, and I was 8 years old. And I picked that book up. I went to my older sister's bedroom, and she had it on her bedside table. I picked it up, and I called my best childhood friend, and I said, wow, I found a really cool book. It sounds like it's really going to be scary. I'll meet at your house. We'll have a sleepover tonight. And me and my friend Starla and probably 6 or 7 other kids, we slept out that summer night. I read the book over the weekend. I had nightmares. I got my ass beat. My mom just and that did it for me. I was 8.5 years old, and I've been addicted ever since. Addicted, literally.
It's a great place to start, too.
It is a great place to start, because people that have seen the classic movie with Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, I mean, my God, what horror fan has not seen that movie? A lot of people didn't even know that it started from a book, and the book is, have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
You've seen the movie. If you take the movie and multiply it by 5 or 10 times, the luridness of the book and the graphic horror and the stuff that Jane does to Blanche in the book is way worse than it could have ever been done in the movies in 1960.
Well, exactly. The time period was a problem. That's why it's so amazing in that those 2 performances are so it makes the film work. It wouldn't have worked with lesser actresses. It just wouldn't have.
It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. And I don't know if you watched Feud or
No.
oh yeah, they hated each other and it worked. The movie is still to this day a horror classic, and a lot of people don't consider it horror, but when you watch it, it's true horror. It's real horror. It's horror of the evil inside of a human mind, and that's the worst. That horror to me is worse than any supernatural horror could ever be.
So you've seen the definition that opens my videos. Just as a basis, would you roughly agree with it?
Yeah, I agree with it.
I feel that horror is about how we react to it, not about anything necessarily, any component
100%.
actually in
100%.
It's the only way to make sense of the genre, I think. I mean, otherwise it just seems so random and way too diverse.
Yeah, way too diverse. You have to take it for what it is. You can't take it. I do have friends, and I know a lot of people that take it very serious, and they live their life by horror. I couldn't do that because a lot of my followers know that I grew up just a block and a half over from Ted Bundy when I was a little kid. So, he took my older sister to her senior prom. So I read horror and take horror just to be entertained and be scared. I can't live it. A lot of people live horror. They live out their horror through their body I can't do that. I do it as a form of entertainment. And I'm too big of a chicken shit, Lauren. I'm scared. I am scared of everything. I am scared of everything.
And yet you put yourself on the roller coaster every night. There you go.
I do. And if a roller coaster is going to go 140 miles, I'm going to be in the front row. So yeah.
Yep. Well, that's actually the best place to be. But that's a different conversation. If you're the most scared person, needs to be up front. It's the best place.
Yeah. I like the back. The back is my favorite, but I'm scared of everything.
So, despite what I just said about the framework of the evening, as questions come up in the chat, I am going to throw them to you, even if they're out of sequence with what we're talking about. Yeah. Simply because I will lose track of them. They won't get answered, and I'll get messages later about why are you ignoring me?
Why'd you ignore me?
Yeah. And there is cases where I do ignore, but this isn't one of them. So Christian says, all right, I've got a question. Hey, Richard, for someone who doesn't read much, but is a big fan of 70s and 80s horror, he means film, what would you recommend? What would you recommend as some titles I could jump into that you would recommend?
Horror fiction or movies?
Fiction.
Fiction? Oh, God, I could tell you one of my favorites that I give to a lot of people that don't really know a lot about 70s, even 60s and 70s horror. Pick up Thomas Tryon's Harvest Home.
Harvest Home or the other.
Pick up Robert Morosco's Burnt Offerings.
Oh, absolutely.
The book is incredible. Or even pick up, I just did a review on it a couple of weeks ago, pick up Paula Trackman's Disturb Not the Dream from 1981. Incredible book. They're really easy to get. They've all been reprinted.
And none of those are those are all like 70,000 word novels. Too. They're not, none of them are going to break your back.
Nuh-uh. You could read, Thomas Tryon, it depends on what version you read, but it's got like 450 pages, but it's a quick read. People call it a slow burn. It's one of those books that it's not a slow burn. It starts off on the third page and you're hooked. Or even if you don't want to go like gothic, like Harvest Home, pick up a copy or even download the ebook of Michael McDowell's The Amulet. Or I know a lot of people say, oh, that's cheese. That's really cheese. But it's easy to read and it's quick to read and it's gory, but it's not to the point where it's going to make you sick to your stomach.
Well, have you ever seen Christian's channel? I think that might be the best suggestion yet.
I have seen Christian's channel. Yes, I have seen Christian's channel.
So I think he's not afraid of the cheese.
Yeah, you're not afraid. He's not afraid of the cheese. But Michael McDowell definitely. Even John Saul. A lot of people razz me all the time, and it's not because I know John Saul personally. I love John Saul, and I've turned John Saul onto I've turned so many people onto John Saul, and they've never been disappointed. So yeah, pick up a John Saul book. That's really easy to get into. But yeah, Thomas Tryon, all the way.
well, you just won part of my heart, man.
Yeah.
Because I was just saying the other day that he does not get talked about like he should be.
Yeah, I saw that on your channel, and he doesn't. He doesn't. The man, oh my God, when we lost him, it was horrible because the man had a pin of poison, but he could splatter blood on that page and then scare the living hell out of you in the next 5 pages, and then, you know, make you cry in the next chapter. And he was good at that.
And he was the ultimate mic drop author. The final chapter of any of his books will crush you.
Oh, they'll devastate you. And Lady is still one of my favorite books by him. And people, I don't even know well, I know you read it, Lauren, because you made a comment about it the other day, but a lot of people have never read that because it's not considered a horror novel. But
so, I mean, people like to use terms like horror adjacent, which I really don't like, because I think at the point where you're even throwing the word horror, just throw it into the genre. Just do it.
No.
But I think it's one of those situations where if you're not feeling uncomfortable by that book,
yeah,
I don't know that I can know you.
Yeah, because horror doesn't. I was talking to somebody online the other night, and they were like, they were chewing my ass out about, well, how could you not like this? It was so gory, and the sex was awesome. A book that's gory is gory. You know, there's authors that throw gore in for the gore. That's not going to scare me. That doesn't make me. And I'm going to throw a name out here. I just did a review on Jason White's novel, his short story collection, Isolation. There was a story in there that totally messed my sleep patterns up for the last 2 nights. And it had its gore in there, but the psychological horror totally just completely messed me up. And I was sitting and I had my students at the house today, and we were working on jewelry and we were working on a piece. And one of my students said, oh my God, I read that story. And, you know, I let her read that story. And she's like, oh, hell no. She said, I don't ever want to read anything by that man again. She said, I'm going to have nightmares. That's horror to me. So, you know, it doesn't have to have blood and guts, and a book can have no gore and it'll still give me nightmares. That's true horror. That's what I call horror. There's a difference between zombies. Zombies don't scare me. I don't consider zombies horror, and I don't consider post-apocalyptic books horror. There was a book, though, called 1 Second After by William Fortune. The book just scared the shit out of me. It really made me look at our lives and the way we treat the world around us now completely different. So, yeah. You know, horror affects people different ways. Some people aren't afraid of anything, but
the problem I always have with apocalyptic fiction, and I've read my share of it, and I like some of it, but my problem is that nothing is ever going to be as scary as John Hershey's Hiroshima.
Oh,
which is the ultimate post-apocalyptic horror novel. It's also a true story, and it's a first-hand account. It's brutal.
I can't read it. I've read the first 42 pages, and then I couldn't read. I didn't read past
that's
it.
a good chunk of it, though. It's not a long book, but I mean, still, it's brutal.
Yeah,
so, Darren Burrows asks, did you ever get to meet Ted Bundy?
Did I ever get to meet Ted Bundy? Here's the funny thing. I can't talk too much about Ted Bundy because of legal issues. He still has 3 sisters. I did meet Ted Bundy. I was 8 years old. Ted Bundy was 13 years older than me. And I remember Ted Bundy when I was in kindergarten. He hung around with my older brothers. I never, you know, like went and had a beer with Ted Bundy because, of course, I was not old enough. But yes, I have met Ted Bundy.
Okay. I've not.
I have met Ted Bundy.
And I'm not feeling like I missed out.
Yeah, you didn't miss out. No. But it's funny, being an openly gay man, I remember being in 1st grade and Ted Bundy was probably one of my first adult crushes. So it's kind of funny, but kind of twisted and sick.
Yeah, I don't think that's a resume piece. Under special qualifications. I don't think so.
My sister still has her prom picture on her living room wall, and she's very proud of it. But yeah.
Wow.
He was he was different.
Yeah, so a few years ago, though, there was a gentleman who decided to shoot up a bunch of people in a parking lot. A bunch. I think he shot 30 people. I'm not sure if he killed anyone, but Anyway, he was the guy who used to deliver UPS to one of the places where I managed. So I mean, it was like, oh, it's that guy. So it's weird. It's a weird thing, like when real life violence intrudes and the people are people. They're not these monsters that we're expecting them to be. I'm not saying that what they didn't do is monstrous, but when you said hello to someone dozens of times and they seem like a normal person, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Kind of different experience.
It's kind of funny because speaking about bringing up Ted Bundy and stuff, there's a true crime book out there called Headshot by William Burr. The 3 killers in that book went to high school with me. And when they were arrested, that was a total shock because the St. Pierre brothers it was Chris and Paul and then their friend Andrew Webb. And Andrew Webb was Paul's age. And Andrew and Paul were a year older than me. Chris was a year younger than me. So to think that those guys would have I don't want to ruin it for anybody that, because I've talked about this on my channel before, but if you like true crime, it's a book that takes place in Tacoma, and it takes place on 38th and Pacific Avenue. I could give you the address. I could give you all that stuff. But there was a Friday night party in the summer. There was a drug deal that had gone wrong, and Andrew was on an LSD weird crystal meth, but they accidentally shot a guy in the head, killed 2 others with a shovel, and then cut the one guy's head off with the shovel, took his head to the bay in Tacoma and buried the head in a bucket of cement. And the sister that went to the dance with Ted Bundy, she's in the book because she was at the party that night. So
there you go.
It's weird.
One more true crime thing in our lives, and then we will move on. But do you remember in 92 or 93 when that Exxon executive got kidnapped and put in a storage space and died? It was on the national news like every day for 2 weeks.
That wasn't the one. Was that the one in Ohio or Iowa?
No, it was in Jersey. It was 5 minutes from my house where they stored him in a storage unit. I went to school with the daughter of the husband and wife who did it.
Oh. Yeah, the
SEALs. I mean, it's a thing. They're out there.
They're out there, and it's like I was telling Brad Proctor, we were talking about I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and to think that the Golden State Killer lived 13 miles from us, and it's just like they're out there, and that's the kind of horror that scares me because you don't know. It's a term that's used so many times. Oh, you don't know who your neighbors are. You don't know who's watching. You don't know who your neighbors are. And it's pretty scary.
So Jamie asks, what's your favorite horror movie and how do you feel about the current state of horror in film?
Oh my God. My favorite horror movie has got to be a 1963 black and white classic with Barbara Stanwyck, and it is called The Nightwalker. The horror movies, oh God, horror movies today. Okay, this I'm going to get a lot of hate from, and a lot of people are going to say, oh God, I think the horror movies that are made today are really, they're just not good. But don't get me wrong on that, you guys, because a couple weeks ago, this movie's been getting a lot of buzz. There's a movie out there right now, and it's playing on Amazon Prime. It's called He's Out There. I have never been so mentally scarred as I was after I watched that movie. Bruce and I watched it one night. We started at about 11 o'clock, and it's like an hour and 40 minutes long. You guys, you want to see a scary ass movie? It's got every trope in the world, but do not think that you know where this movie is going to go, because it does not go where you go. And the only flaw this movie has was the very last 5 seconds. Otherwise, the movie was a 5-star, probably the best horror movie I've seen in the last 5 years.
And I just actually watched an Indonesian film this morning called Taboo, which is kind of an Evil Dead riff, but from a Muslim part of the world, Muslim Asian part of the world. So the iconography is all different. And I absolutely And I'll double down on it. America needs to find its footing, because besides A24, we're stumbling around in the dark.
Love A24? I love A24.
I love it. I love A24, but it feels like they're the only ones not stumbling around in the dark, without wearing their pajamas.
Yeah, I love
and
A24.
There's sections of the world that are getting it right, like time and time again. We're falling way behind.
Blumhouse was really, really good when they started, but even they've just gotten. But yeah, there was a lot of buzz when Get Out and Jordan Peele was making his movies. I thought those movies were some of the worst movies ever made, but
I won't go that far, but I wasn't a cheerleader for them. I thought they were obvious, which I guess is probably a pretty big condemnation.
I wanted to go to Santa Cruz while they were filming it, just to see if I could get in as an extra in the movie. But yeah, I thought Get Out was good, but Us, I still don't understand Us. And I've watched it 3 or 4 times.
So, Richard, I have a pet theory on this, because I think the more you read horror fiction, the less original the Jordan Peele thing feels.
And I say that all the time. Every time I do a book review, it's just like, I'll read a book that got 4 and 5 star reviews all the way down on Goodreads. I'll read it and I'll give it 1.5, 2 stars. I'm going to be 60 years old. I've read thousands of books, and it just, it doesn't, it's nothing new, or it's nothing that scares me anymore. But he's out there scared the hell out of me. And the movie's flawlessly done. It's like, have you ever seen a Serbian film?
Yes, I have.
Oh, I refuse to watch it.
So you've not seen it?
Oh God, no.
So
I got to that scene, I couldn't watch anymore.
You made it through most of it then.
It really, it doesn't aggravate me, but it really turns my stomach to even think of it. And I've seen the making of it. I've seen, that prop. That is just too extreme for me.
So I take it you're not a big reader of like Edward Lee or James Rathwhite?
No, I love Edward Lee. Flesh Gothic. I love Flesh Gothic. And Timmy from Lost Cunningham, he sent me The Backwoods. I just recently read it. I loved it. I really, really like it. So you're cool with extreme on the page, but on the screen it has limitations for you. No, it has limitations. When like the extreme horror that was in Hostel, flawless. It did what it was supposed to do. It fucked with your mind. It fucked with my head. I walked out of there. I will never. And Bruce and I travel a lot. I will never ever stay in a hostel. Never. But I wouldn't have well before that film. No, but see, I wouldn't have before either. Yeah, no way. No. I have to think about being able to shut doors and know they'll stay shut. I don't know. No. Griffin asks, I've seen Tourist Trap way too many times, and I remember the weekend it came out. It's just like, okay, no. And Bruce thinks it's funny. He'll say, "Well, Richard, let's take the dog and let's go for a drive." And he'll want to go somewhere where he has no idea where we're going. No, I'll stay home. I will stay home. It's like, yeah, I'm a chicken shit. I'm scared of everything. So Griffin wants to know how many books a year we both try to read. Oh, let me see. It's really funny if I'm not making jewelry for jewelry shows. Like this year's been messed up with the COVID and stuff, so all of my shows have been canceled. I've done nothing but read and work on special orders, like the pieces that I sent to Josh at Working Man Reads and the piece that I sent to Timmy at Lost Cunningham. I will read. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'll go through. If I'm listening to a book on Scribd, I can listen to a book while I work on a piece of art. But, sometimes I'll read, I've read 8 books in a week before. Sometimes I'll go in a spurt where I can't get a book done at all in a week. So it just comes and goes. I think it decides on what the weather's like. So if it's good, like, the forests are on fire, reading weather out there, then it's reading weather all the time. I'm even more extreme than you. I mean, I will have times when my interests fade from reading every night, and I'll go even a month Without reading?
Without cracking. Yeah, absolutely. Now, keep in mind, I'm writing during this whole period because I write every day.
Yeah.
And I think there is points where you should pull back on doing both for very specific reasons. I don't have the headspace that some people do. So there's times when I have to devote myself to one or the other. But then there's going to be times when I'm just devouring books, right? Like left and right. And
where you're reading devouring pages. Yeah.
Yeah. And it all depends, but it depends on where my headspace is at, how I'm feeling. But I never have a number in my head that I need to hit. And I'm glad I don't.
I don't probably, that's why I don't do TBR lists.
Yeah. Well,
I can't follow them.
I could never imagine keeping a list of books anyway, because I think you're very different.
I have too many thousands of books I still have to read. So
I think you're very different than me in that respect. Like when I'm done with a book, unless it's something I know I'm going to revisit within the next few years, I move the book on. I give it to someone.
I usually do that. I usually will trade them on paperback swap. But if it's like a book where I know I'll reread, I'll just, because these books are some of them 2 and 3 books deep. But I give as many away as I do accumulate and put on the shelf.
Yeah, I don't believe in holding on to something if I'm not going to actually enjoy it again.
Yeah,
and a book, if I didn't like a book, oh God, it's gone.
I was going to say, are you not a rereader? Do you reread?
I do, but I tend to reread very like the same titles. So if I casually liked something for years, unless I have some great pull to bring me back, I won't probably ever reread it.
So who is one of your favorite authors to read?
Well, I read William Peter Blatty's Legion at least once a year.
Oh yeah, you and I talked about that.
Yeah, so I think it's a flawless book and by the way, I do think that's possible. I'm on record for saying that I don't think there's such a thing as a flawless film, but I do think there's flawless books. And I think Legion is one I go back to. Prototype by Brian Hodge I go back to constantly.
And Cypher, it's so funny because since I talked to you the other day, I still haven't read Brian Hodge.
Oh, yeah, we got to fix that, man.
I have like 6 of his books and I've never read him.
But the only problem is if you start with Prototype, because that's the Mac Daddy of the bunch. That's the big bad, right? Like I think it's one of the most important horror novels ever written.
Now, did you read Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane by Blatty?
Yes, and I read it in both forms. The censored version, which was Twinkle Twinkle, and Ninth Configuration. After the film came out, there was an uncut version that was released on paperback. I have both.
Did you like the film?
I like the film. I think the last act kind of loses a lot of its steam, and the bar scene should have been just.
You were lucky enough to meet him, though. I mean, that book you had on the community the other night, I was just like, I was shocked. And you met him. I mean, that is just.
So hold up just a second. I showed. Oh, Richard, you there?
You did that. I haven't moved.
I didn't do that though.
Let me see. I haven't moved.
Wait, I'm gonna take you out and put you back in. Let's see what happens.
All right.
Nope. We lost your picture. Anyway, this is not the book I showed.
No, that's not.
But it does have.
Oh man. Let me see if I can pull my camera. Wow, what happened? I haven't moved or touched anything.
Yeah, I don't have control over. I can just put you in or out of the broadcast. I can't turn your camera on or off.
It's okay. Let me.
So I'll answer a question that's directed towards me in the meantime. Griffin asks, "Do you think it's best to read Hodge's Nightlife and The Darker Saints before you read Prototype?" So the reason you're asking this is because there's characters that weave throughout those books. Darker Saints is probably a good idea before you read Prototype. Nightlife is a whole lot less necessary. I love Nightlife, however. It's probably my second favorite Hodge. My thing is, what I would do if I were you is just go through the catalog. Oh, you're back. Go through his catalog, and you really can't go very wrong.
I'm not moving. It's just weird. It's like
Hopefully Richard can get back with us. He's struggling a little bit. I don't know. Okay, so he's struggling with his webcam. Oh, I think.
Am I back?
You are right now.
Cross your fingers, you guys.
You're a cue ball once again, sir.
Yay!
I think the California wildfires are playing a game with you. All right. Christian asks, how about this? What is the best atmosphere to read? Dark, quiet room, candlelit, rainy day? What's your ideal setting for getting into a book? You know, I at this point in my life anyway, I don't think there's a perfect time to get into a book. My eyes are not what they used to be. Before I got Lyme disease a few years ago, I had much better eyesight and I could read in near pitch darkness. And that's not true anymore. Lyme really did a number on my eyesight. So now I have to really have some pretty good lighting. So I tend to read as the last thing I do in a day. So I'm usually in bed when I do read, but there has to be a lot of lights on. A lot of lights. Richard is going to try to go completely out and come back, apparently. So hopefully he can rejoin us, because if not, that conversation just barely got started. All right. Not much I can do about it from this side, though. So let me ask you out in the chat, what are some of your favorite horror novels you've read? And Jamie says Lawrence Pumpkin is mesmerizing. Well, that pumpkin, and some of my peers know this, I was walking through the grocery store 2 days ago or a day ago. I don't even know what day it is. And he was sitting on a shelf along with some Halloween goods. And if you saw the introduction, the placeholder before this video started, you saw him up close. He's like this cartoonish recreation of the opening of Halloween 2. And it was just so amazing to see something like that in a grocery store for like less than $15. He's resin. He takes a button cell battery. I think he's amazing. He's a part of the collection now. And that's the thing, is I'm not a big collector of things necessarily. I don't need to own every piece of molded plastic that comes out that's based on a property I love, but you can win me over with something just that damn cool that I come across unexpectedly. I did say a lot of lights. I need a lot of light to read. I'm just getting older. I'll be in glasses, seriously, inside the next 2 years. No question about it. Christian asks, why does Jason look like he's about to dive off a cliff? Because he is actually a basketball player mannequin without a head under all that. I have never owned a lava lamp. I will never own a lava lamp. I used to sell lava lamps in stores, and no, absolutely not. Big Crack Rock says they need to genetically modify those damn ticks. They're like they're doing with the mosquitoes. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. You know, I never took Lyme seriously at all. I thought it was just, I thought, oh, people get sick and whatever. I didn't realize it sticks with you for 7 years, and that even after you're treated, it can still affect your senses and your resistance to colds. It's amazing, life-changing event. I recommend like bathing in deep woods off before you go into any woods. Griffin is suggesting to Christian that he checks out Salem's Lot and The Shining. Those are the most fun and easy to get into. Well, Christian's seen both the films they were based on, so I don't think that that's probably that big of an issue. But seeing what's happening with Richard. Just give me a second, guys. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him back or not. I'm going to be really bummed. Okay. Can I recommend Ramsay Campbell books? Maybe 3 or so. Doll Who Ate His Mother, The Influence, Incarnate. Although I'm really a bigger fan of the short stories than the novels in the case of Ramsay Campbell. Hey, Richard, how are you?
We decided to have a rolling blackout, you guys. Sorry about that.
Oh, well, that at least makes some sense.
Yeah, it does. I was wondering because I was like, no way. So thank God we have solar energy on the house. So yeah, I'm back.
Cool.
Sorry about that, you guys. You can't control Mother Nature. It's like, hey.
Okay, I'm just checking.
So what did I miss?
So I just answered the question of recommending Ramsay Campbell novels.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with Doll Who Ate His Mother, Incarnate, and The Influence. What would you go with?
You're going to put me on the spot here. I had to do it on the spot. I don't care for Ramsay Campbell, so I couldn't really recommend a book.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's go back to our regular scheduled program then, because we'll get back to Ramsay Campbell, and we'll get into it.
Yeah.
So talking about horror past, what is your feelings on the classic horror writers? And for this, what I'm talking about is anything about to mid-century. So I'm talking and before. So I'm talking, your Mary Shelley, your H.P. Lovecraft, your Robert Chambers, Arthur Machen, Edgar Allan Poe, Sheridan LaFoe.
Poe's flawless. I love Poe. I just read my very first H.P. Lovecraft the other night, believe it or not.
What did you do?
I read the Dunwich Horror, and I absolutely loved it. I really, really liked it. I liked it a lot. Mary Shelley was way before her time. The girl was just very gifted and very talented. Bram Stoker, not a Dracula fan.
Didn't put him on my list, if you might notice.
But I loved what was the book he wrote about the 7 stars, the 7?
Oh, the Mummy book?
Yeah, it was a mummy book that Bram Stoker wrote. The Jewel of the 7 Stars or something. Great book. I'm just not a Dracula fan.
Dracula is one of those things that it's been adapted into a better and better work, or at least a more iconic work.
Yeah.
The original novel, I don't know, I'm going to get crap for this, I know it, but it's kind of a big letdown. It's an epistolary story, but it doesn't really pull together into any kind of real narrative.
Yeah,
it has great images, but no good scenes. It's weird.
Yeah, never been a really good fan of Dracula.
Yeah.
A lot of people are, though. A lot of people, I know people that have read it 4 or 5 times. I read it once and that was enough. We had to read it in literature in high school and that was enough. Never read it again.
So let's tackle the Lovecraft thing for just a second, because unfortunately, and this is a pet peeve of mine, unfortunately, you can't talk about Lovecraft without talking about the fact that the man was a racist and a misogynist. And my issue there is that I worry that in 30 years, I believe that veganism will be probably the mainstream. It'll probably be the majority. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm a meat eater. I'm it's just what I am. I think if you go 100 years in the future, I could look like a troglodyte to people.
But what does
And
a troglodyte look like?
Well, like me. So I think it's just one of those things that I worry about condemning people for their personal beliefs in their time when they are this far in the past. Now, I have no problem taking someone to task for what they believe today and espouse today, or even 20 years ago. If they're still with us, that's one thing. If they're someone who was born before the turn of the previous century, I think it's dangerous to judge people lest we be judged in 100 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So while I don't condone his beliefs, although they did moderate, if you read his collected letters, but by volume 5, he's not the guy, the 23-year-old who was doing his amateur journalism, which is really hateful stuff. He was not that guy anymore. He was evolving.
But it's like when you and I talked on the phone about the director of Jeepers Creepers and Powder. Yeah. God, what's his name?
Silva.
Yeah. The man is so talented. Powder is a movie that I could give to somebody for a Christmas gift and say, just watch this movie, and it's an experience. And yeah, the man has messed up beliefs. I'm not going to condone his work or pick at his work or not watch his work just because of what he did in his life. And it was the same way with Lovecraft. And like I told Timmy on Lost Cunningham one time, it's like, because I know Tim and Brad and a lot of even Jason at Jason Weird Reads, they all idolize Stephen King, and they all, really like Lovecraft. But yeah, so I tried him out, and I really, really, really liked it.
I'm so glad you did.
And it's so weird because I thought his works were from the times of like Mary Shelley. I didn't know he was just alive when he was. I thought his works were that old.
He damn near made the Second World War.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think that his decision to pursue a much more in his own time ornate literary style, because his prose was not contemporary. It was already 30 years out of date by the time he was writing. Yeah.
He was way before his time.
And well, in content, I don't think we've caught up to him, to be honest with you. But it's just interesting to me that the conversations, like there's a television show based on Lovecraft right now, and it's all circulating around his racism. I'm like,
what's that? What show's that?
A Lovecraft Country.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, can we just get adaptations of the stories first? I don't have a problem with the show.
Of his works first.
I would like to get to the mainstream what he accomplished before we tear him down.
Yeah. Because I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair at all.
Yeah, I think maybe the show is a great show. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of television, but I know that that's the major component of it. And I think that's a little bit unfortunate because people haven't got to enjoy what he contributed before we're talking about, his detriments. And I don't know if I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, but yeah, the Dunwich Horror was great. And I remember watching the movie as a little kid.
The movie always comes, This Dean Stockwell movie?
Yeah. But yeah, the original one from 1958, 59. But the story is completely different. I was getting, it kind of reminded me of, what's that movie, When a Monster Calls?
Oh yeah.
That book, it kind of reminded me of that. I could just see this poor, pathetic character, being born into this horrible body and just this town doing this to this poor guy. And it actually made me cry at the end. I cried. I was surprised that my eyes actually welled up. But yeah, the man, his writing's different. How would I describe his writing for somebody that's never read him? You just got to go into it with an open mind because it's very wordy. It's very descriptive. It's very drawn out. But that's just the first one I've read by him. So,
well, I'm really crazy interested to know what you think as you keep going on.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely post more about what I feel about him because I think he's somebody that I'm really going to like. I'm going to learn to like him. But I know it's kind of funny because I know you don't really like McCammon either, and
we'll get to that.
yeah,
And
I
you worship
placed
him.
McCammon. I placed McCammon right left chair next to John Saul. If I had Stephen King across the street on one corner and Robert McCammon or John Saul was right next to him, I'd run over and have lunch with John Saul or Robert McCammon before I would Stephen King. And I have a handwritten letter by Stephen King. So.
Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted that. So Horror Reader asks, what's your favorite Simon Clarke novel? This is really easy. Blood Crazy. Blood Crazy just was the most fun read. I think I read it in like 2 hours because I just was
Blood Crazy was fun. Blood Crazy was fun because it wasn't. I don't think of Blood Crazy as being like a virus book or an overtaking or a zombie book, but Blood Crazy was fun. But Simon Clarke.
I'll tell you one I didn't like, which was Darker. Darker really pissed me off.
I didn't like Darker.
I hate the monster that is so elemental that we don't bother describing it. That trope kills me.
Yeah, and he didn't really flesh out that monster very well.
No, it was whatever it needed to be.
Yeah, it was just kind of stupid. Simon Clarke's a hard one. I've only read like 4 of his books, but there was one that had the guy like on a rainy street on the cover. God, I have it right over there somewhere too. But yeah, Clarke's a hard one.
I do
Clarke's not an author that I pick up when. Simon Clarke is one of those authors that I pick up when I'm sick, like if I'm in bed with the flu.
Well, he's because of the sparse prose and the very workman-like structure. You can breeze through him. I remember there was an author in the 80s, late 80s, called B.W. Batten, and I believe it was a pseudonym for someone we both know. But anyway, that's a different story.
It was.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like these formula detectives hunting for the serial killer novel. And they were all the same. But I picked up every single one of them because even though they were all the same, there's no surprises in them. They were like potato chips. You couldn't just eat one. You just kept going.
Batten's work was that kind of work. It was like, God, I read the same story in the last book.
Exactly.
I never got into Batten either. And the cover art was always so stupid and cheesy. God, the cover art was terrible. But it's funny because when I was thinking back when we were talking about Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, there was a book published in probably 81 or 82 called it was by Michael Murphy Jr. The title was Quonset. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Oh my God. I'm going to do a review on it on the channel in a couple weeks.
I'll track it down at that point. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's about a serial killer he starts off in New Jersey and he goes
as they all do.
He goes across from New Jersey on his way to California, driving a van with an operating room in the back. And it's only about this thin, but the print is micro print. And I've only read it once. I read it when it first came out and the book disturbed me. There's a scene in there where he removes a young boy's spinal cord and the book is extremely graphic. And I'm getting ready to do a review here on it in a couple of weeks. So look for it. It's a good book. It's really, really hard to find. If you can find a copy for under $50, you're lucky. But I have 3 or 4 copies of it. But that's another one that just really,
So then after the classics, like mid-century is what I call the next grouping. And that's your Shirley Jacksons and your Ray Bradburys, your Robert Blocks, your
Ray
Richard
Bradbury,
Mathesons.
you can't go wrong. Robert Bloch, same way.
Bloch was interesting because he was such he was like a journeyman writer in a way, because he didn't fit into one category of horror. He kind of did it all.
Yeah.
But again, that clarity of voice, he was one of those guys that was a transitionary figure because he had abandoned flowery prose entirely during the course of his career. he pared down. And I don't love that he ended up having to kind of capitalize on the Psycho thing with those two sequels.
Yeah.
I don't love those books, but I do appreciate that there was a payday at the end of his career somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because unfortunately,
Yeah,
too many
books,
of the...
Yeah, the books weren't that good. Psycho House was just so cheesy. It was like a really bad Richard Raymond book. But, you know, and Psycho 2, the book, I actually liked better than the first book.
Well, I think it's interesting because it's so different than where anyone else would have gone with it.
Yeah.
He basically took Hollywood to task, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it is Scream before Scream.
Yeah. And I met Anthony Perkins. I have pictures of me and Anthony Perkins at the world premiere of Psycho 2 in Seattle. And that book and movie both will always be very special to me just because of that. But yeah, I thought the second book was actually better than the original book.
I'm not sure I'll go that far, but it's probably colored too, because I read the original Psycho was one of those early reads. So, you know, when you really enjoy something and you're 12 or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to overcome that because Psycho 2 was a book I didn't pick up until it was in the 90s when I picked it up. It was much.
Oh, yeah.
So any favorites from that time period? I mean, obviously, like something like a Richard Lehman. I mean, you can pick just
from the
any
90s
title.
or the
No, from the mid-century writers.
Actually, no, I don't have any favorites from them. Shirley Jackson, of course, We Have Always Lived in the Castle is my favorite book by her.
Me too.
I do place it above The Haunting of Hill House. The book Haunting of Hill House is still a classic to me, and it always will be. I read it in literature like a lot of them, but We Have Always Lived in the Castle is a book that I will pick up just to reread it, just to revisit those characters again. And she was great.
Mary Cat is one of the best characters in literature.
Oh my God, Mary Cat, and there's never been another character written like her. Never.
Well, talk about the unreliable narrator issue. Like, your feelings on her change about 8 times in that book.
yeah.
Because you're like, she's nailing shit to trees. Wait, what's going on here?
She was a twisted female. She was a mess.
She's awesome.
Yeah,
I still haven't seen the film adaptation, but I really need to just sit down.
Oh, you haven't?
I love the cast, so I mean, but I'm terrified if they screw it up.
It was all right. I didn't like it.
Okay.
I didn't like it because I love the book so much. That's
a book. You see, you asked me before. That's a book I revisit at least probably once every 2 years. We
Have Always Lived in the Castle?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have two copies. I have a nice copy, and I have the Penguin Classics copy, which I've beat to shit.
Yeah, that's the copy I want.
Yeah, because you can replace it cheap.
Have you ever read Robert Morosco's Burnt Offerings?
No.
You've never read the book?
No.
It's the ultimate haunted house book.
You are better read than I, sir. That's just true. We need to.
Oh my God!
I don't think I'm doing bad, but this gap.
Yeah, because you and I talked about not really liking tropes or reading certain or watching certain kinds of tropes, but a good ghost story or a haunting, can't go wrong with it with me.
So in the eternal debate, and you'll come off on Team Jackson, but so Matheson's Hell House versus Shirley Jackson's Hill House, the eternal debate. Where do you land?
Ooh, Matheson's Hell House.
Really?
Oh my God. I've only read Hell House once and I've never read it since. I read it in high school and I've never read it since.
Wow.
That book scared me.
It's a tough book. It's very melodramatic when you go back to it. That's my only warning to you. Like, yeah. There's some definite like hand wringing in that book.
Oh my God.
But when it hits, it drops both cylinders on you. Definitely.
Yeah. I've read it once. I've never read it since. Hell House. Yeah.
Griffin says, Lauren finally found a guest that has read more than him. Yeah. Well, I knew that was going to happen.
I've read literally thousands of books, thousands.
I don't know.
And,
I don't even know how to quantify what I've read in my life. Like I've never kept any kind of track.
I remember, it's kind of funny because I know you're in your 40s, you and I talked about that, but do you remember as a kid, did they have the scholastic reading programs where you got to read so many books, for the month, and then you'd get a free book when you were in elementary school? Did they ever do that?
There was a scholastic program, but the scholastic program was ill-suited to my interests.
Oh yeah.
So I was never part of it. It was like
the books were
Judy Bloom or Judy Bloom.
Yeah, the books were very elementary aged, but that I remember being in 5th grade. That was where I got my first copy of Psycho.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was not available to me.
Yes, I got Psycho. It was 75 cents. But yeah, so, and I remember the summer of between 5th and 6th, me and my childhood friend Starla, that I no longer have in my life, her and I challenged each other to see who could read the most books. And in a 3-month summer, I read over 150 books. Yeah.
Well, then you won that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and some of them were little, some of them were scholastic books, but actually,
let me ask you that, because this doesn't apply to me at all. But people constantly include graphic novels in their number of books read.
I've never read one. I can't say never.
I've read Watchmen, and I've read the Long Halloween.
I can't say I've never read one because I did read Cycle of the Werewolf when it originally came out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's a graphic novel. It's a graphic novel. It's illustrated.
You know what? I'm sure you do, but you know what it started out as, right?
What do you mean?
It was originally supposed to be a calendar.
Oh yeah. It was supposed to be a 12-month calendar. Yeah.
Which probably is what it should have been. But
I can't read. I can't read graphic novels.
I just don't know if I consider them reading a novel. I think they have literary value.
I've never read comic books. Did you read comic books as a kid?
Not as much as most of my peers. I had a 1-year subscription to Silver Surfer because my aunt didn't know what else to get me for my birthday. And I loved it, by the way. It was great. It was like the darkest period of that character. He's trying to commit suicide constantly. It's just, it was about the weight of immortality. That was what that year was about. And it was great stuff, which you wouldn't suspect from, superhero comics. But that's not what the comic was at that time.
Yeah.
But when the subscription ran out, guess what?
Then you didn't get any more.
That was kind of the end. But I think it's a different thing. And I kind of don't like the conflation of, I read a graphic novel, so I'm going to count that as having read a book this year.
Yeah. I don't consider them books.
I consider them books, but it's a different sort of thing. It's kind of like the difference between, like, if you see 2 television shows, does that count as a movie? Not to me.
No, not to me either.
So.
No.
So
what is the best thing you've read in the last 5 years? Horror-wise, not sci-fi.
This is extraordinarily easy for me. The Ancestor by Danielle Trussani.
See, you talked about that, and
it's just. Let me tell you why too, because the crazy thing is, if I was to tell you the plot, which I won't do, because what's going to happen is you're going to say, I've read things like that before, and you have. It's so wonderful to see the rebirth of the American Gothic in a modern language. What she's done is really clever. And clever is not even a good word, because that sounds almost like an insult.
Because she's not that old, right? She's not that old of an author.
No, well, she's younger than both of us.
Wow.
But she's also the New York Times horror reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
So
I did know that.
So she's read all her contemporaries.
Uh-huh.
So that's a great advantage to have, right? You get to learn from everyone else for a while.
And learn from the best. I mean,
absolutely. Without an expense to you. You get paid to do it.
Yeah. That would be great.
But but unfortunately, there's exactly one position out there for it, and she's got it. So,
it would be great.
It's the kind of book whereas I felt not just what the character was feeling, but what the author was instilling as a point of view as well. So it was like almost like dual narratives in a sense, because you felt very, very much what our main character is feeling as she goes. She's dealing with loss from a miscarriage, and she inherits a castle. She goes over to Italy, and she's trying to get back with her husband. And that sounds all very gothic, right? It really does. But the other side of it is it never comes off as like soap opera-ish or maudlin. It always it feels like a very vital story from a real person. But then you have this other side of the writing, which is very smartly modern. And it keeps reminding you that no, I'm not, that it's not going to insult our intelligence.
Yeah.
It's treating us like a modern audience, which is, when you talk about modern fiction, and I'm not going to name names, but certainly in the leisure years, there was examples of this where I felt talked down to as a reader. And I was like, I've read this type of
book from Leisure,
from people who were published by Leisure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'd read the books and I'd be like, you know that I get this before you get there, right?
It's
But
like,
they're acting like I've never read anything this clever before. And I'm like, oh, really?
but
Again?
that's why they were so successful.
It is. It is.
That is exactly why they were so successful.
But yeah, and it's a recent read. You know, what did I read that a couple of months ago? And it forced me to reach out to her to get her on the show, because I was just like, got to get her on here.
The book came out when was the book published?
I think like March, maybe late February.
Yeah,
I was not right on top of it.
This year, I do know that.
Yeah, I wasn't right on top of it. It was only when a bunch of people I trust started saying, this book's something special. This isn't what you think it is. Because I have this idea in my head always, when mainstream books come out in hardcover from major publishers and the horror community kind of is eyeing it, I always get the impression it's going to be really mainstream. It's not going to be my thing.
Yeah.
And that's not what this book is. I would say the last 40 pages of that book will take you a place that you just will not believe that something so mass market and marketed towards literary audience goes. It's unbelievable.
Wow. I just ordered it. I ordered it on your recommendation, so it should be here.
Cool. You got to let me know.
It's supposed to come here Saturday. I'm in the middle of 3 books right now, so yeah. But
you read more than one book at a time?
Yeah, I can read more than one book at a time.
I always feel like I am always feeling like I'm cheating on a girlfriend. So I can't do that. I can't do that.
I've never done that, but yeah, I can.
Well, no. Well, Claire, to be clear, I can't do that.
Yeah, I've never done that, but I can read more than one book at a time.
I have.
It's very easy to do.
Don't choose to anymore, because it's. I've said this to you before, but I mean, I learned that you got to space certain things apart, like reading The Stand, Swan Song, Dark Advent, and
because that really messed you up. That ruined
Floating Dragon. I remember going back when the expanded version of The Stand came out, and I'm impressed that we went this long without really talking about Stephen King. But
you know how I feel about Stephen King, and I know how you feel about Stephen King.
Absolutely. But when The Stand, the expanded revised version came out, I remember going back and reading it, and I was looking for characters that were from the other books. But I'm like, when are they going to? When does he introduce this guy? It's like,
but that was a clever move that he did when he re-released that with all those chapters. It opened that book to so many more readers worldwide. I mean, because when The Stand originally came out, the AIDS epidemic was going worldwide. And when he republished it, it brought in that horror and that terror. You could relate the Captain Trips to an AIDS epidemic. And it really opened up a world of, I call The Stand a horror novel, but I call The Stand a true horror. I mean, it's kind of like what we're going through right now. And when he did that, I think that was the best thing he could have ever done for that book. Now, I have a lot of friends that think the original, 640-page book is better than the uncut, but you have to look at both of them as complete different books.
I'm just waiting for my version that pares down the Mother Abigail middle of the book down to about 3 chapters, and then I'll be very, very happy with the book. It used to be my favorite novel.
That's what you said.
But
you didn't like Swan Song?
I won't say I didn't like Swan Song, but again, it's very tough for me because I read those 4 novels in a very short period of time, and
Oh God! And
colored my perspective.
You can't read Swan Song and then read Floating Dragon.
Well, I did. Actually, I think
I
might have
know
read,
when you
I might
said
have
that.
read Floating Dragon first.
Oh, you did? Well, I read
I'm-
Floating Dragon first because it came out it came out first, but I read them when they came out. But yeah, when you said that, I was just like, oh man, you really just like took a whirlwind mind fuck.
Which one of these books is the one where the people get the lumps on their face and it breaks off and they have a different body underneath?
Yeah.
Which one is the one with the highway scene with the cloud? I don't know. They're all the same book now.
Swan Song, to me, Swan Song is 10 plateaus higher than The Stand for me.
All right, so let's go there. So the modern past. So we have McCammon. We have people like Blatty and Ira Levin and Thomas Tyron and Peter Straub and F. Paul Wilson, James Herbert. I'm referring to my notes because
F. Paul Wilson, the keep.
Yeah, absolutely.
My God.
Ramsay Campbell, James Herbert,
Ramsay Campbell,
Kathy Koja, Brian Hodge, Clive Barker, Dean Koontz, Anne Rice, and some guy named King. So what? I mean, this is getting into your sweet spot.
Yeah.
What is your favorite stuff from this era? What is the stuff that really just turns the crank?
From this era, I'm going to be honest with you. I've only read one Anne Rice book, and that was Interview with the Vampire. I have all of her stuff. I've never finished a Ramsay Campbell book ever, and I probably own 30 of his books. James Herbert, I've read every single thing he's written more than once.
He was a controversial guy when he came out.
He was very controversial. He was very controversial. He wrote about things that people didn't write about. That scene in The Fog where they, castrate the gym teacher and feed him his own testicles. Things like that weren't done back then in the 70s. And when he wrote, I don't know where this stuff came from, but modern day, I mean, and we can put King in with the modern because he's still publishing today. I like his stuff up until he got sober. When he got sober, his writing changed, and I was no longer a fan of his works. F. Paul Wilson, incredibly talented man, but now his what's the electrician or the carpet? What are they called?
Repairman Jack.
Yeah, I can't get into the Repairman Jack books. I don't do series well, and I think that's why I really have a hard time with Stephen King, because so many people will be like, "Oh my God, Richard, that's the character from this book," and then you saw him, and it's just
I don't care.
I don't read a book for that. I don't read horror to, oh, was that character in Needful Things? Or I don't read horror for that. And
so I have this rule with my reading is like, I don't want protagonists that go looking for trouble, because then I can't feel bad when they find it.
Yeah.
And that's the Repairman Jack thing. It's the X-Files thing, except X-Files was always smart enough to be tongue-in-cheek about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a difference. If someone goes looking for some trouble and they find a greater trouble, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But the person who goes, "You have a problem with a werewolf? I'm going to that town with a gun." I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
God. If you die on page 4, I'm not going to feel bad for you because you went to the town where the werewolf is.
Yeah.
And I just think that's just bad writing at that point. It's conceptually bad writing. The writing itself might be great, but the creativity is just, to me, bankrupt at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as attack on F. Paul Wilson, because he's a great writer and he's much more artful about it than you'd expect. But I have a problem with that structure.
And I know how you feel about Dan Simmons, but another author you didn't use the word, or their titles was like Ruby Jean Jensen, William W. Johnstone, and authors like John Ferris. John Ferris wrote a horror classic, When Michael Calls. God, absolutely. When Michael Calls is still one of the most scary page-turning books you can ever read, and it's only 168 pages. But you read that book and you're fucking scared to answer the phone, because he was so good at what he did when he wrote that character. And then that's where the Black Christmas and the Callers in the House, it all spawned from When Michael Calls. And
absolutely.
authors like William W. Johnstone, who wrote, pulp gore and demonic horror fiction better than anybody could do it. And yeah, he did it for Zebra Books, but nobody could knock him off the pedestal either at Zebra Books. And when Leisure approached him to, publish his books under that, he just didn't want to do it. And, there's authors like John Ferris and Ruby Jean Jensen that their books still, sell teenage kids and 9-10-year-old kids. I was just in Barnes and Noble and just saw a young girl, probably 10 years old, pick up The Fury. And then she picked up The Devil's Heart and The Devil's Kiss by William W. Johnstone. I'm just like, well, I was the same age, when I was reading that kind of stuff. But yeah, people like you and I talked about on the phone when we were talking on the phone, they build their world of horror around King and other authors. And I just don't do that. I've never been one to just place these people on pedestals. I do with John Saul. I honestly do with John Saul, Robert R. McCammon, and Michael McDowell. And those are three authors that, till the day I die, I'll continue to reread their books because nobody wrote horror like they did. And same thing with Thomas Tryon. Tryon was just, the only book I didn't like was Night of the Moonbow. Please don't tell me you liked it.
I respect it greatly. How about that?
You do?
I do.
Now I'm going to ask you why.
Because I think it's an experience book. I don't think it's intended to be taken the way his previous work, certainly. And also, remember, it was a return book. It was trying to re-handshake, right, to his audience. So I think it's
so do you see Cutter's influence for the Troop from that book?
I'd have to think about that.
Yeah.
So because I think Tryon just didn't want to be thought of as the guy who was riding on anyone else's coattails at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So he did something so drastically different than everyone expected him to do. And I think it fell flat for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But I respect the impulse not to do, because listen, we'll have the King conversation because this is the perfect segue. When you hear, oh, King is doing a book and it's going to be a time travel piece about going back to the Kennedy assassination, or King's doing a book about an evil revival church, you just see how easy that is for him, right?
Don't blow that, because I'm 80% into revival right now for the first time.
So I mean, but you see how easy it is for him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not. It's what he does. It's his brand. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that it's not quite. If King came out with a huge departure novel tomorrow, there's risk involved. I mean, at least some risk involved for him. There's a reason we got Duma Key. We got Duma Key for a reason, because Lisi's story scared people.
Now, did you like Duma Key? I loved it.
I liked it. But I think I liked it for nostalgic reasons more than what was actually on the page.
Yeah.
But he's a great businessman. That's the other side of King that no one gets.
Yeah, he's very smart.
He knows exactly how to play the business, and I don't mean play in a negative way, but he knows how to run a business that keeps his audience engaged. Clearly, right?
Now, have you ever read his wife's works?
Tabitha?
Have you ever read Tabitha's?
I have read. I've never read a Tabitha novel. I've read some short stories.
Oh, you've never read Small World?
No.
Oh my God. Talk about fucked up sexual torture. Oh my God. Yeah.
So here's an acknowledgement from me. There might be a small bit of I don't want to call it resentment, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of everyone in Stephen King's family getting a book deal.
I feel 150% the same.
I'm not saying that they're not writing great books. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you can't divorce the fact.
Writing good books.
Well, I'm not publicly coming out.
I love Nosferatu was a great book. The Fireman fucking tanked.
All I'm saying is that it's hard to divorce the fact that there's a lot of great voices out there working in horror fiction.
There are. And
if it all comes back to the same dynasty of a family, then we're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not to put down the individual writers. I just feel
Yeah.
strongly that we should be searching for new voices.
Yeah.
And, so when I had V. Castro on the other week, we talked about this. We have a different approach about how we want a diversity of the voices out there, but we both agreed that we want different perspectives because we need different perspectives.
Yeah.
And that's people from different walks of lives that have live different lives. And that's not talking about color of skin or religion or any of that. It's just saying different lives. Now, I think we'll get all those differences naturally, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to see the best work out there getting the attention that the mainstream press in publishing tends to just heap upon Family King.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm getting at. That's where I get disturbed.
Yeah. It's upsetting actually, because they're not all great writers. In my opinion, just like any review I do on my channel is my opinion only,
I'll tell you what I really wish King would do. He could settle this in my mind overnight, because it's a minor issue. If he just turned to his publisher and said, I want a book line, I want to hire a editor I really trust, and I want you to put out 5 horror novels a year from up and comers.
Mm-hmm.
And they could do it with the money that he brings in.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to see him kind of, because he used to do it with blurbs, right? But now he basically doesn't do the blurb thing for horror writers. He'll do them for crime writers, but he doesn't do them for horror writers.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see him start that legacy building the way that Charles L. Grant did. Because Charles L. Grant is one of the most important figures in horror fiction ever, in my opinion, simply because he sat there and said, yeah, I'm a commercial property now, but I'm going to put out these Shadows anthologies, and I'm going to showcase the next generation. It was important to him. Those
were good books.
Incredible. They're the reason I write today.
Yeah, they were great books.
And look, you read a Melody Tem short story in there, and you went, mind blown. Fine books.
And people don't even know who Melanie Tem is. People are just now discovering her prodigy. And one of my favorite books, and it's one of probably a book you're going to say, oh my God, Richard, I'm surprised you like it, was The Tides.
Oh,
yeah, I think because that was the first book by her I ever read. And I still think of that senior citizen home. It just, But the Shadows books were great. And I think those were the first short fiction books that I read that I actually liked. But it's like you asked me earlier about modern fiction. I'm going to tell you why I can't get into modern fiction. I can't stand the editing problems.
There's no editors anymore.
Oh my God, I hate reading a book and then just say, that's not even a real word. Or I start to count how many misspelled words I read on a page, and it just fucking drives me nuts, Lauren. And I think that's why I have a problem with modern fiction. And it's not fair to them, because there are a lot of talented people. And I just, I'm learning. I've learned a lot over the last 2 months. There's incredible new writers out there, and I've really opened my mind to a lot of them, and I'm really glad that I did.
Yeah, I mean, again, Danielle Trusani, I am a big fan of. Clearly, Sylvia Marino.
Because you read Mexican Gothic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just
it's a very divisive book, and in the horror community anyway, the literary community seems to have embraced it. It's a really great little Gothic novel that there's this Gothic revival going on right now.
I love Gothic. Gothic is so huge right now.
Modern Gothic is just a big part of the scene now, and I think it's great. Stephen Graham Jones, obviously, is getting all the press right now for The Only Good Indian. It's pretty amazing.
See, I didn't like it.
Well,
but yeah.
And Paul Tremblay is probably the closest thing we have to someone chasing the Stephen King, byline at this point. So I think there's a lot of talent out there. They're just not being marketed as horror necessarily.
I just read Survivor's Game or Survivor Song by Tremblay.
Survivor Song, yeah.
It's the 4th one I've read by him, and he's just not my. He's not my.
You didn't like Cabin at the End of the World?
Oh my God, no! I thought it was so stupid and cheesy. It was so predictable. I had it figured out.
I agree with that, but I had a lot of fun with it.
I had a lot of fun with it, but after the first 80 pages, I was so bored with it. I was just like, oh God, it just, I could talk for a whole hour on that book, but I know a lot of people haven't read that book and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I just thought it was just a waste of 2.5 hours of my life I'll never be able to get back.
Okay, because I can't resist doing this. This is completely self-serving.
Yeah.
But Jess Graham has a comment that he's found somebody whose work he likes.
I have to say I've really enjoyed writer Lauren Dixon's work lately. It's funny because I have 2 of Lauren's books. I've just never read them.
That's the smart way to go. Just buy them. Just buy them, put them on the shelf. That's
there you go. Just put them on the shelf and collect them.
That's the sane way. I'm like the action figures of the horror community. Just buy it, put it on the shelf. Tell me you bought it, and we're all good.
I know, it's like, just say, hey, I spent the money. But no, I plan on reading them. And the reason why, and I'll be honest to you face to face, I've learned a lot in the last 2 months about new modern horror fiction, and I'm learning to actually love it. There's been a couple, and I'm not afraid to, throw this book out. Night Dreams was probably one of the best books I've read in the last 5 years. And J.P. Willey's Blood in the Woods, my God, the book totally fucked me over for the rest of my life. But I've read it 3 times now since I've had it. And there were editing problems in that book too. But Joe and myself have become really good friends through that book. And I'm learning to, put these nitpicky, bitchy problems that I have with myself. It's not the book or it's not the author's problem, and I'm learning to love them. And yeah, I'll get to your books, and you'll know firsthand, right from my mouth, what I thought of them. And but yeah, I'm learning to really like modern horror fiction. But the book that's really circulating now and everybody's just salivating and going crazy over is Clown in a Cornfield. And Adam Caesar's a phenomenal writer. His book Video Night is one of I've read it twice. I have a blast with that book.
But it's the slasher thing, though.
Yeah, it's the slasher thing, and it's that I'm not a huge fan, and this is going to sound really, really stupid, and I'm dating myself because of my age. I cannot stand cell phones. I did not own a cell phone until almost a year ago when Bruce really wanted me to have one because I started having seizures again. And he was like, Richard, I want you to have a cell phone. I just couldn't get into that whole, everybody's, not my age, and people are 20 to 35, they love it. And they really fall into that book. I've talked to people on my channel that have read it 2 and 3 times already. And
wow.
In a week.
See, now that I think is counterproductive. Read something else.
Yeah, read something else. I talked to one of the girls that follow me. She's like, she emailed me this morning. She said, Richard, I've read it. It's 3 times now. It's my favorite book. That's cool. That's really, really cool. Support Adam as an author. I just need to get out of what Richie likes or what Richard loves, and I'm learning. But
well, by the same rate, I mean, this is your time to spend on this spinning globe.
Yeah.
Don't ignore things that you are more likely to like simply because you think it's somehow academically better for you to read something else. You might be a guy that, the mid 60s to 1991 is your thing. That might be you. There's nothing wrong with that. Every once in a while, should you step out of it? Sure. When something organically compels you to do so, hey, this book's coming out. It sounds awesome. Or
now
hey,
there's other genres of modern stuff that I absolutely love, but horror, I've read so much horror, it really has to scare me for me to like a book and recommend a book. I get so many people on a weekly basis say, Richard, can you recommend a book for me? It's hard for me to recommend a book because what I like, some people would never pick up. Like it's hard to promote or tell somebody to read Tryon's Harvest Home or read Tryon's The Other.
The Other.
The Other, you know, people are like, well, that was stupid. That was boring.
No.
But The Other is one of those books when you read it and after you close that cover, Lauren,
you don't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, you're driving to work and you're thinking, oh my God. The pitchfork scene and the little jewelry box scene, it's a scene you'll remember the rest of your life. And
that ending.
Oh my God. And people think, you know, oh, this was done in that movie. No, this was done in the early 70s. That movie that you're talking about took from the Thomas Tryon's book, The Other. You know, these are all things that came out 40, 45, 50 years ago. This is what all the horror is based on now. And people that, you know, I don't want to say kids, but people that are in their 20s and 30s, they read the new modern stuff. And then, you know, of course they think it's because that's what they read first. But yeah, it all spawns from the stuff of the 70s. You know, like you and I talked about Blatty the other day. It's like, you know, people
Blatty all day.
Oh God, I could too. Blatty, you know, people's like, oh, well, you know, the most horrifying, you know, horror novel ever written was The Exorcist, but Blatty never wrote The Exorcist as a horror novel. He wrote it as a crime detective thriller. And if you look at it that way, it is a crime detective thriller. You know, you think of the lieutenant and all them characters in there. It was a sad book. It was a very sad book. There were a lot of troubled lives in that book. But then you see the visual aspect of Regan McNeil and Linda Blair, and yeah. But then there's people that watch it or read the book and they're like, oh, that's stupid. That was done in this or that. No, it was done first in The Exorcist.
So Richard, I'm gonna give you a moment just to talk about your site, your YouTube channel, what you do on that, and you know, because it has a history to it already, and it definitely has an influence. So go ahead and speak to the audience about why they should be heading over to your channel and subscribing tonight.
It's really funny. Go to my channel because are you there? Did I lose you?
No, you didn't lose me. I'm just going to showcase you, just you.
So, yeah, go to my channel, and it's funny because right before Lauren and I started the live stream, somebody said, "Well, Richard, do you have a bookshelf or do you have a library shelf? Go to my channel and check out a lot of my old videos. You'll find horror books that you'll realize, wow, that sounds like it would scare me." And I've read a lot of horror. I've read thousands of horror, and you guys, you can tell behind me, there's books in here that you will see on my channel or learn about that they'll change your life. And I don't mean, nightmares. There's books that I've done reviews on that I've had people, in fact, I've had a couple big, huge name authors send me emails and said, I just picked up that book on your recommendation. And I've been writing books for 30 years and I never thought of that book that way. So like I say in all my videos, you guys, if you're not subscribed to my channel, go to my channel, watch 4 or 5 of my videos and stop and think. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert at anything. Everything that I do on my channel, you guys, is from my own opinion. I like things a lot of people don't like, and I hate things that a lot of people love. So, I really push the fact to the world of readers of horror. You guys were all different. So, what scares Lauren or what scares me is going to be completely different, you guys, and you'll find that on my channel. And, I do a really weird, I do a very wide array and variants of horror. You'll see vintage horror and you'll see new horror, but it's all on there, you guys. And I think you'll find something you like on there.
I just think it's great to have a voice out there being a cheerleader for the genre in the written form. That's an increasing rarity in our time.
You know what? And it's been so fun. I'm so glad that you reached out to me because it's really been a lot of fun. I never thought when I started at Lauren that I would meet people, the tons of people that I have around the world, just through what we all love is getting scared. And it's great. It's great.
Yeah, and the thing is, I keep pushing this, but the only thing we really have is the community.
Mm-hmm.
It's really all we have, because the websites, the media attention, it'll come and go. We've
Yeah.
seen it in our lifetimes. You know, there was a time when you couldn't go a month without picking up Twilight Zone magazine for your, fantastic fiction hit.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's long gone now.
Yeah.
You know, things
It
change.
is long gone.
You know, we had a point where you could subscribe to Leisure Bookings and get 3 books a month sent to your house
Yeah.
for subscription for novels. That didn't survive. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, you look at the world today, and with independent publishing, we're hearing a lot more new voices. So the world continues to evolve, but all that's going to change. But the thing that doesn't change is that we're there to love it. And we talked a lot about books tonight. This is true of movies. It's true of graphic novels. It's true of music.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the places that horror invades.
But there's nothing like a book, Lauren, and you and I have talked about this before. There's nothing like picking up a book and reading a book. You can watch a movie and spend an hour and a half, but to read a book, it's just that seed gets planted here, and that little root of evil or horror, the flower might not bloom for 5 or 10 years down the road, but you'll say, oh my God, I remember where I know what caused that nightmare. It was that book I read a week ago or 20 years ago, and that's what a book does. And
so
it's true.
At night when I want to go to sleep, I have a process to go to sleep. I know that sounds ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks I'm completely psychotic, but I know for myself, I have 5 levels of thought that go on. There's the thought right now that's saying, what do I have to do? Which button I need to push? And I'm plotting out, and I'm very, very organized and very front lobe, right? Then behind that, there's what am I doing in 10 minutes? And then behind that, there's all the kind of stuff that I'm planning for tomorrow, next week. And it's only
I'm not like
barely
that.
processing, right? And then way at the back is like, hey, what happens if I touch that hot stove, right? Which
so where does your writing fit in those?
Oh, no. Hopefully all those places, but probably not. But the thing is, at night when I'm going to go to bed, I turn off one by one, like light switches. You turn off your active thought, and then the next. And by the time you get to that last thought, you're kind of out. You're kind of good.
See, and I can't do that because I have a hard time falling asleep.
And the thing is, I think when you watch a movie, you're watching it up here, right on your forehead. Mm-hmm. You're watching the movie. Yeah. A book has the ability to thumb back a few layers and hit you there. Yep. And that's what you're talking about a bit. It's sticking with you for 5 years. I think it gets into your subconscious.
It's completely different than watching a movie.
Movies are a passive experience. You watch a screen, you're told a story. Mm-hmm. You have to choose to read a book, and it's a very participatory activity. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. We talked about a lot of books today, and I could pick one at random, and your experience reading that book was completely different than mine. What you felt was the best scene in a book, most important, the linchpin, the thematics.
Oh my God, yeah.
Will be completely different. You will envision characters completely different. Mm-hmm. Which is why I almost don't like to see books that adapted to films, although I think it has to happen for us to get good stories. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't happen nearly enough. But on the other hand, when I see a book that I've read as a film, I'm always kind of like, wow, this is so different than what I saw in my head. Mm-hmm. But I think if you don't read, this is advice that's worth exactly what all of you are paying for it, which is nothing. If you don't read, pick up a horror novel. I don't even care what you do. Growing up, I've said this story before. I picked up 2 books from a yard sale. One was Shadows Volume 3, and the other one was The Glow by Brooke Stanwood.
Oh God.
Everyone read it though, and
the horrible movie with Dean Cain.
I didn't even know I didn't even know the movie existed until like 2 months ago. But
oh my God!
I still haven't seen it. But at that age, I mean, I was probably 9.
And it scared you, didn't it?
It was a world-changing event, but there was also a sense of pride about having read a novel.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much what you choose to read. I think eventually it is. Eventually.
Do you remember why you picked up The Glow when you were 9 years old? What was it? The cover? Because
it was those were the 2 horror novels on the picnic table at the yard sale. Okay. And one of them was a big win, and the other one I thought was a big win for a couple of years, and then I realized probably not. But But I think the experience of reading a novel, even a mediocre or even a bad novel, is not something I've ever regretted. Whereas I have regretted watching certain films.
Yeah.
So I guess
yeah.
what I'm suggesting to everyone is give it a shot. Just roll with it if you don't
Yeah.
normally do it. And if you do it, or if you're lapsed, because hey, I told you before, I lapse all the time. Just pick something up, read a few pages. You'll be amazed where you go.
So let me ask you before we end this: what was the first book that got you into reading horror? Were you a young boy? Were you a young kid?
It was that day of yard selling. It was Shadows 3, because I did the Stanwyck book. I took a while for me to get around to. I was a kid, you know. It was like, ooh, there's something on television, but that short story collection just blew me away. I no longer have that copy because I did give it away. But by the time I gave it away, the cover was just literally a cardboard colored slab.
And the covers were always so cool on those books.
Yeah, that was the green skeleton with the, you know.
Yeah,
but,
it was like picking up a copy of Fangoria when you were a kid.
Or Famous Monsters, yeah, because I was at the tail end of Famous Monsters too.
Yeah.
But it was, I think that what got me hooked was that, and then a couple of years later, Night Shift started the King Ball roll, the King Ball rolling for me.
But you're a fan of short fiction. You like short fiction. Yes?
I used to like it more than I like it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a point where I loved short fiction. I think at this point I'm with most of the society. I don't understand why I don't love it more than I do. But I mean, I did read Velocities by Kathy Koja this year. But I don't read a lot of single author collections. I just don't. Kath, it's obviously a difference though. I've been following Kathy for so long, and I've loved her work consistently. I know you are not the biggest fan, but
but that's not to say that she's not an incredible writer. She is. She's a very talented author.
But you said you did finally read Cypher.
Yeah, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I really liked it. I really wish I could get into Bad Brains. I really want to read Bad Brains.
Bad Brains? I think I have a copy. No, I have a copy of Skin right over here.
Yes, and Skin was good. I really like Skin. Oh God, that's gorgeous.
It's a little beat up. It was bought used, but yeah, you can tell. It's also ex-library. I don't know. If you
oh wow, yeah, it is.
Yeah, but I saw this at a library sale. I'd always owned the paperback, and I was like,
yeah, it's like
I didn't even really know it existed as a hardcover. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's like you and me talking about the first original hardback of Gunslinger.
The Grant edition, yeah.
I still have it.
I never owned it. I wish I had, but it was sold out as soon as it was published. It was expensive for a book at that time. Now we look back now and go, no, it wasn't. But at the time it felt like it was.
Yeah, yeah. I read it once and never read any more of them.
Griffin is asking, how often do you two stop reading a book because you don't enjoy it?
Honestly, you want to know the truth? I just DNF'd a book yesterday. I will DNF a book if...
So that's what happened to Bleak December.
That's what happened what?
To Bleak December. It's okay.
Oh, the book? Yeah. Yeah, I'll DNF a book if... In the last 6 months, I think I've DNF'd 4 books. And one of them was a book by Jonathan Janz. And I'm not afraid to say it. Because I love Jonathan Janz's work. It was a waste of time.
Do you think he's publishing on a schedule at this point, and that's the problem?
I think he's just throwing them out. Look at the big K. It's like...
Yeah,
he's become like Danielle Steele is. You know, she can publish a book every 2 months, and I DNF'd it. I DNF'd 2 books this week. It's funny you bring that up because normally I won't DNF a book because I have to find out how that book ends, or I'll close it. I'll close it and put it back on the shelf, or I'll put it over by the jewelry table where I'm working on a piece of art or something, and I'll pick it up later. But for me to actually DNF a book and not finish it, It's been happening a lot lately. And I hate to say it's been new horror fiction. And it's not because I didn't like the author. The book was stupid.
It happens to me, but it doesn't happen a lot. I usually commit. I will tell you that even with some of my favorite writers, it does happen though.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heartbreaking. I'm not going to name names on my favorite writers, but it does happen. Sometimes they experiment with voice in a way that I don't particularly love, or that's a big one with me. If I can't get into, especially if it's told first person, and the voice just doesn't seem authentic to me, that is always a problem with me. That's one of the reasons I don't like first person as much as I like third.
I can't stand first person. I'd rather read third person.
You have to really commit to voice if you do first person, and that's
you have to get in, you have to literally be able to get into that character. And if it's not written to where that door is open where you can climb into that, it's hard for me to do it.
Yeah. And ultimately you're going to end up having the character look in mirrors, and it just annoys me. But
bringing up mirrors, it just, oh God, that book I just read the other night that gave me nightmares. Yeah.
All right. Well, so Richard, I'm going to take care of a little business. Stick with me though.
Yeah.
Just going to take care of a little business. I after talking to some of my recent guests about this on and off the air, I've decided that I am going to announce the schedule of the coming shows for the coming week, so that you guys can have a little bit more warning than I've been giving you. My only caveat to this is please understand that schedules sometimes do shift or change. I've not had to cancel or postpone a show. I've been lucky because everyone has stayed on base, but there's always that possibility. So I'm going to announce these shows, but if anything does change, just hang with me about it and be understanding. So what we have here on Saturday, September 5th, we have the community show coming up in a couple days on Bad Remakes. That's the third part of our 3-part series. Anyone can join that from the chat. The link will be posted. That includes you, Richard. You can by all means jump on if you want.
Great.
Then on Monday, we have Todd Kessling coming in.
That one, I'm not missing that.
And that, again, is a thing that came from you guys. You guys, on another chat on another board asked me, hey, can you try and get him on? And I said, I'll try. And he very quickly responded, and we made that work. Then on a week from today, we'll be doing a Tobe Hooper film panel discussion with some familiar faces. I won't announce them yet, but we're pulling them together right now. That should be a fun evening.
Wow. That'd be fun. That'll be a lot of fun.
I think it will.
Yeah.
So, Richard, I did put a link or two in the description, I believe. But how can people follow you, and where are you all online?
Well, let's see. Online all the time. I'm at my channel, of course. You can always reach me through my email at rkevinwilson@yahoo or gmail.com. I refuse to have Instagram. I know I take a lot of junk from that, but I'm just busy. Horror is probably 80% of my life, but I'm not that type of person that I'm not David, God, who wrote Scanners?
Cronenberg.
I'm not David Cronenberg, where I can attach myself to that video tube and that internet stuff. But you guys can always find me on my channel. You can always email me. You can go to my Facebook page. I have 2 Facebook pages, one through my artistic pages where I do custom horror artwork. I do custom jewelry, and that's like the old RKO films. It's capital R, capital K, capital O, and then originals, RKO originals jewelry. You can find me at Richard K. Wilson with the middle initial K for Kevin on Facebook. And you guys are more than welcome to, you can always call me. My number's on my page. Don't ever be afraid to call me. I love to talk about horror. I talk, if you just want to talk. If you just want to call and say, hey, I need a book that's, I'm always open, you guys. I'm a complete open page book. So yeah, you can always find a way to find me. And you can always find me through Lauren too. So But yeah,
I'm basically an answering service. That's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, always just go to my page, you guys. You can always reach out to me anyway through there, and I answer everybody, you guys. Sometimes I have to say, hey, back up a little bit, but I'll always answer you. And I don't have a bad bone in my body, but I do. I love horror, and you guys, I know a lot of. I've read horror for, oh my God, 52 years now. So I've read a lot of horror you've probably never even heard about, you guys. So yeah, always reach out to me. But yeah, just definitely go to the channel. Are You Into Horror? You can always find me there.
And that I will definitely make sure, if I didn't already, that there is a link in the description. Richard, I want to thank you, man. This was a lot of fun.
You know what? I had a blast, Lauren, and I want to thank you for reaching out and asking me to do it, because I had a ball. So I'm really, I'm really jealous. I'm really jealous about the Blatty book, though.
Well, unfortunately, that's a limited commodity that you can't replace. So.
It's like, yeah, you'll never get my first edition of Gunslinger either, but.
That's okay. I don't love the book anyway.
Yeah, I did.
The second book is better.
Love the cover artwork, and but yeah.
All right.
I had a ball. I had a blast, though.
Do me a favor, Richard. Just hang out on the other side after we're off the air for just a moment.
Yeah, cool.
But to the rest of you, I hope I see you on Sunday.
You'll definitely see me on Sunday.
I hope you see me on Saturday, not Sunday. On Saturday at 2 p.m. That's the community show. And
oh yeah, I can't. I'm teaching a class, so the Saturday's off.
Sorry about that. It is Saturday, not Sunday. I don't do shows on Sunday before.
Yeah.
But I hope everyone out there, you can jump on or at least watch on Saturday, and we'll see you through the week. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Take care, you guys.
They make movies look bad.
Where should I start? I saw this movie.